watching Rashkin Report. This is Yuri Rashkin, and I'm excited to welcome to our program today someone who's been actually a guest of the program in the past and a person who needs no introduction in Russian, but in English. I am glad to say a couple of nice words about my guest, who has actually worked closely with Bill Browder, which I think is very important, who is the person that we know for Magnitsky Act and is one of most fiercest critics of Vladimir Putin. And Slava is a hedge fund manager in Russia, which makes sense for somebody who would work with Bill Browder. And I'm very excited to welcome him back to the program. Let's discuss. Slava, we have seen an incredible investigation come out about Alexei Navalny and attempt on his life. I was personally just amazed by CNN reporter who walked in and knocked on the door of the leader of this crew and said, "Are you the person involved with the murder or attempted murder?" Just incredible journalism. But how is this being seen in Russia? And how do you think that, who is this intended for? Who could be the audience for this kind of investigation?
Hi, Yuri. Thank you for inviting me. The last time I checked on YouTube, this 50-plus minute video from Alexei Navalny, which is based on the investigation of the consortium of Bellingcat, Spiegel, and CNN, and the Russian media outlet Insider, and then at later stages of this investigation, Navalny's anti-corruption fund joined forces as well. So the last time I checked, it had about 8.5 million views in about 48 hours, and if we check right now, it's probably over 10 million by now. And this is only those who actually watch the video. Some people whom I know, they read really fast and they prefer not to watch videos, but they scroll down a huge investigation report on Navalny's website and his blog, which is mind-boggling in terms of detail and credibility. So we, not even counting in terms of views of this video, we're not even counting those numerous people who just read this report. It really doesn't matter that out of 146 million people in Russia, 130 million or whatever don't know about it. What matters obviously is the knowledge of most active people and those who actually make the difference in many aspects of life in Russia, including politics, including potential demonstrations and those people who not only necessarily ready to go into the streets, but those who live and work and are middle class or upper middle class, and those who understand everything for a long time and have been in the loop, or those who came to a lot of understanding what's going on if they haven't been in the loop before. So now this span is wider and wider, and that's what's important. It actually goes into more and more layers of most active people in Russia. You cannot. You also. It's important that the Putin's regime is supported by what is called in Russia systemic liberals or system liberals or something like that. Those who are allowed to work and live within this regime, who are known as quote-unquote liberal economists or liberal politicians or whoever, the head of the central bank, the finance minister, then one or two people in the presidential administration, then maybe by now the former head of high-tech government-sponsored organization and reformer in the Yeltsin's government, who was the architect of privatization, Anatoly Chubais, maybe the head of the Russian largest state-owned bank, Sberbank, who also used to be a reformer in the past in the government. They also come to realization by now, documentally proven, that they are working for a murderer, for a mass murderer, for a criminal, very, very dangerous criminal who is a murderer. And so in various layers, in various bits of, spots of the Russian society, more and more people come to realization that there is no president. It's just a bandit, a criminal, a murderer who seized the power and doesn't give it up and won't give it up because there is no way out for him.
But at the same time, they know that they can't get out, and they know that this is the way. They try to make something of themselves in Russia. I guess they couldn't do it anywhere else. They rose to some prominence, and now it comes out that their boss is involved in some really bad things. What do you do then? You can't get out of this. You can't quit Sopranos.
Their bosses are involved in murders. They themselves are involved in lots of different criminal stuff, including major theft of money from the Russian budget, really astronomical theft from the state-owned companies that they now had. So they are tainted by Putin and his close circle. So there are no people within this systemic liberal camp who are not tainted. And they cannot get out, not only because they fear for their lives, because of this Novichok situation that they can get killed or sent to prison, like a former Minister of Economic Development. But they also know that there are so many files in the FSB and in the Russian security service, which is a successor to the KGB. There are so many files on each of them. There are so many telephone conversations taped, and there is so much stuff on them that they cannot get out either. So they have no way out too, regardless of what they understand.
So how does this jar of scorpions affect the business climate in Russia? How does this situation help business development from your point of view?
Well, I know a few people from the Russian Forbes list, and top 100, top 20, top 10, you name it. Not all of them, obviously, but I know a few. Not only them personally, but also personally, many top managers, many executives from their organizations. They've been telling me that 6-7 years ago, they gradually stopped being involved in the past, 7 years and before that, 7 years ago and before that, they were wheeling and dealing. They were in constant negotiations in meeting rooms, discussing all sorts of transactions, including mergers and acquisitions, and all of that was based on, pretty more or less market terms with other Russian business people and investors, and with international investors, and all of that, just M&A deals, private equity deals, financing on international capital markets, IPOs. This was the name of the game in the Russian equivalent of Wall Street or City of London, but not anymore. They're telling me that now they only discuss two things: how much they need to bring in cash to a certain address in a suitcase each quarter or each month, and if they wanted to sell, it's no longer a market type of mergers and acquisitions or exit or whatever. It's just the negotiation with Putin's bureaucrats on to which state-owned company this company will be sold, how much they will get, and how much out of that amount they will need to return back in the form of cash to the bureaucrats.
So all the acquisitions are being done by the government.
It's not it's not the government. There's no government. There's
Government
no
corporations.
State, and there are no government corporations. They are just named that definition, but they're not. These government corporations have majority state-owned ownership, but there is no state. State has been dismantled. There are no. It's not even division of power. We're talking about that there are independent branches of power, right? But there are no branches of power at all. There is no legal system. There is no parliament, and there is no executive branch. This is just a bunch of criminals. Whatever you call a state, this quote-unquote state, which is dismantled, owns majority stakes in major Russian companies, but it means nothing in a Norwegian type of situation. That means that every Norwegian citizen owns pro rata these companies because they are state-owned. In Russia, Russian citizens do not own pro rata anything. All these cash flows from these companies are being stolen to the maximum extent where they can be stolen. And these stolen cash flows become private in the hands of these criminals who seize the power and don't give it up illegally. And that's the way it works.
Slava, some people would express concern that now that there's going to be a new administration in the White House, that this is going to be an administration that's going to be friendly to Vladimir Putin, because Trump was really the one who was really hard on Putin, and now it's going to be bad. What are your thoughts? How do you see this from Russia?
I'm surprised to hear the view that Trump was really hard on Putin. I only saw from Trump only good words about Putin for last 4 years. Not a single bad word, all the good words. Putin is great, we can get along, Putin is a good guy, and all of that stuff. And that's what Trump has been saying. He was just Putin's lapdog all of his entire term, and I don't know why. I can only guess that there is some major compromising material on Trump that Putin has, and this is the only major reason that I can guess of. I see no others. Another, and maybe we'll find out, by the way, I can't wait to see the progression of the investigation connected to Deutsche Bank, for example, how much money Trump got in loans from Deutsche Bank, and I would like to see which capital was used, because it's not Deutsche Bank capital, right? The other side of the transaction in some major form perhaps is the Russian money. We would like to know about it, and probably we will sooner or later. Maybe now with Trump being out, we'll know that sooner rather than later. Trump also, as far as I understand, violated the American law on the it was, I believe, adopted in 1991, based on the use of banned chemical weapons in Syria, if I remember correctly, and that since 1991 there is a law in the U.S. It's American law that U.S. must put forward sanctions against those states and those individuals who do research and development, production, storage, and actual use of internationally banned chemical weapons. Russia used chemical weapons on the Skripal's family in Salisbury in the United Kingdom, and there were international sanctions after this crime was actually investigated by UK authorities and by the consortium of international investigators, including the Organization for Prohibition of the Chemical Weapons. And Russia faced consequences already, but Russia has never seen the full application of the US law to this effect. And I believe Trump is in violation of the law for not applying this law to the full extent. I believe the law contains 2 stages, and only first stage was applied in full, where basically the U.S. must demand on a party which violated to provide a full explanation of what happened, and then open itself to the investigation, and then to the cleaning up of what's presumably is going on within the country, which must not have chemical weapons. And after this certain deadline, if I remember correctly, something like 3 months or 6 months, the second stage must kick in, according to the law, with international sanctions, and has not progressed to that, to the full extent. I would be extremely surprised if Biden's administration will not revisit the previous violation manifested in the Salisbury attack. They probably will revisit and review how the Trump administration did or did not follow its own law. And obviously with the attempt on Alexei Navalny's life via the same mechanism, essentially, via the use of internationally banned chemical weapons, I think that Biden will have no other choice as to actually again follow this U.S. law and apply it to the full extent. So I don't see Biden being less hard on Putin than Trump. I think it's going to be much, much worse for Putin and his gang.
All right, Slava, and then in conclusion, what would you like to see from Biden administration, and what do you consider to be an effective way for the United States or the West to influence the events in Russia? You know, what can West do productively to hopefully have some better outcomes, in your opinion?
Well, neither U.S. nor the rest of the international community can and must or have the right to try to change the political regime in Russia per se. It's the matter for the Russian people, for Russian citizens, to actually do something about it. But having said that, obviously the sanctions regime is not designed to do that, but it is designed to put a very high price on, for example, shipping the criminal money out of Russia and laundering it and using it in international financial system. U.S. and the rest of international community cannot prevent Putin and his gang from stealing cash from the Russian budget, from the Russian people, internally in Russia. They cannot do it. But what they can do is to put barriers and to put a very high price tag for laundering it and for Putin and his criminals to launder the money and ship the money out and buy yachts and villas and diamonds and gold and land and skyscrapers in other countries using that criminal money. That obviously is the most clear purpose of these financial sanctions, including the Magnitsky Act. In terms of the other aspect of that, however, U.S. and the rest of the international community obviously cannot be limited by pointless propaganda from Putin that you cannot close your eyes to the human rights violations in Russia by a stupid argument that this is a Russian internal affairs and please don't interfere in our internal affairs here. It's just the internal matter. It's not, because Russia is the signatory to major international laws and conventions and agreements, including those in the area of human rights. And in fact, even the Soviet Union in its later years, since 1970s, with the Helsinki Act on human rights, it was no longer an internal matter for the Soviet Union. So Russia is the party to these agreements and conventions. Russia is the member of the United Nations. Russia is the signatory to major human rights agreements and conventions, and therefore violation of human rights in Russia, that's also a very important matter for the U.S. and the rest of the civilized world. And so the sanctions could be applied for violation of human rights, especially when we talk about the violation of the most basic human right, a right to life, a right to live, which is what Sergei Magnitsky Act is also all about. And personal sanctions against Putin's bandits. Also, it's all about that in this area. And the same goes, the same logic as with human rights violations. Same logic goes for the research and development of chemical weapons, of its production, of its storage, and of their use. Russia is the signatory to these agreements. These chemical weapons are banned. Russia violated that and violated again and again. And Putin is basically standing in line right now together with the North Koreans Kim Jong-un, with Syrians Bashar Assad, and with the former dictator of Iraq Saddam Hussein in terms of use of these chemical weapons. So I don't even know, Yuri, who would be the next leader of any state who could shake Putin's hand.
It's a good question, and I think that if there's sanctions, then that would be more of like a police line. Careful, there's a crime scene here. So somebody might shake his hand. There's lots of, I think, well, Russia has some client states. I'm sure, like, our Armenian leadership will shake his hand gladly. But it is an interesting situation we find ourselves in. Slava, thank you so much for your time. And it's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for your perspective. And until we meet again, take care.
Likewise. Thank you for inviting.